Arizona.
Oh,
Out of Arizona.
lovely. That
Yep.
is amazing. Never been there, but I definitely have that in my list.
Yeah, it's hot. It's hot. Don't come yet. Yeah, wait till it gets cooler.
Okay, okay. Awesome. So we'll make a start. Welcome on my first step ever. It is exciting that today we are able to get to you the 125th episode of my first step ever. And what could be a better start to actually have an amazing guest speaker who feels as much passionate about the topic of helping the youth, the disruptors around the world, with her own unique take and how she arrived at this purpose, a calling, the goal, a desire that she has, or whatever she likes to call it. We will be discussing about what is the definition of her success and actually diving deep into the behind the scenes of the first steps of her making. So I am very excited to have her on this podcast, especially on the 125th episode, because it's like coming back a full circle, actually having guests who believe in this particular, thought process, the mindset that youth is all around us and they are very powerful and they are not supposed to be fixed but taken as it is. So please join me in welcoming Meghan McGilvra all the way from Arizona, United States. Hi Meghan, welcome on my first step
Hi.
ever.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is so fun and how exciting to be on the 125th. That's big. Very cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it has been more exciting because you are on this episode. So we are on it. And I like to thank one of our guest speaker who have actually introduced us. So thank you so much. And let's begin this because I'm very excited. And before I start asking questions and see who Meghan really is and what does she stand for and why, let me kind of give you a little background about Meghan today. So Megan just does not unlock doors for talent. She bursts through them. Now she talks about partnerships, opportunity for youth empowerment, and workforce development. A lot that she's talking about. She is a workforce development disruptor. Now we will be getting into that, and it's very unique. So anyone who is interested in this, stay tuned. And also, she believes that often we get in the way of our own development and allow the policies and systems to dictate. Okay, I think I heard some background noise. I'm
There's
just
a
going to
background
stop
noise.
there.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Hold on.
everything else.
Let me yell at some people. Let me see what they're doing.
Okay. Okay, the cute kids. Okay. And allow the policies and systems to dictate how we best serve youth and students. Now, she's incredibly passionate about youth development and believes that youth, they are whole within themselves, and as I already said, she doesn't believe them that they needs to be fixed. Now she has spent the last 20 years working with nonprofits, DOL funded initiatives, and developing a new skill set that centers work around those that need to the most, the systems that support or get in a way. And we will be unpacking all of these things, that where does she get this amazing ideas, this projects, the passion from. Let us just go straight to Megan's childhood and understand that where did she grow up in and what was the mindset of people that she was surrounded with. So Megan.
Thanks. What an opening. That's awesome. It's funny. I am a military brat, so I was raised by Air Force family, and we moved all over the world. So we had to move. When you're in the Air Force in the United States, you have to move every 3 years. And so I had to get really uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So no matter where I went, I had to make new friends. I had to figure out the new system, whether that was in the States or in a new state in the States, or it was in a totally different country. And so I think that so much of that worked with how I ended up becoming what I wanted to become, right? I think being able to look at different cultures and societies and understanding how young people are different across the world and figuring out, what is it that creates opportunity for young people. And I think most of that came from having to move so much, right? In the time, it wasn't fun, right? I had to leave friends and, it wasn't fun when I was doing it. But looking back, I think that's really taught me a lot and helped me figure out where I wanted to be.
Well, I think I would like to say that you had a really unique childhood. A portion of people have this sort of, experience where the parents are, military forces, air forces, or, they get, I would say, an opportunity when you look back. But when you, as you said, when you're actually in that age and doing these, hopping the countries every now and then, it's really difficult. I really love the fact that when you look back you understand where those, the foundation and the understanding and the empathy sort of maybe came from. But I would also like to understand this in the present time, like when you were growing up and when you were shifting places, what was the two things, the first thing that you really liked about it, and the second thing that was extremely challenging, and how did that impact you, if it at all?
Yeah, the things I think I liked the most were being able to see new things and new cultures and new people, right? Even though that was like, there were hard moments to it, that was really interesting to me because I think when you stay in one place for so long, it's easy for your world to feel so small, right? And so being able to move around really showed me that like what I thought I knew is not true if I'm living in this place or in this place, right? And so I think that's the part I enjoyed the most, was discovering new things about different kinds of people. I think the hardest part was relationship based. So, because I moved every 3 years, I really thought for a long time that relationships ended after 3 years. Right. So, when you're real small, you're not writing letters. As I got older, I would write letters to friends. Technology was not what it was at the time. So it's not like you were jumping online and connecting on Facebook with them. And so, I think that was the hardest part, was as I got older, realizing that relationships take more work and are longer lasting than 3 years, than the next base I moved to. Right. So that was difficult, to have your very best friend and then never, ever talk to them again until Facebook was around and then we could find each other. But yeah, the world
Now
wasn't as small back then.
Yeah, Megan, I think you have hit the nail on the head with that, because definitely in those times, if you are, for anyone who's listening to us, if you're taken away from your best friends and you can't even reach out to them, that really impacts you emotionally and mentally in ways. So from here, when was the time that for the first time, you started feeling a little more settled in, the place that you were, with people around, and how was that feeling?
Yeah, it was probably like the last few years of high school. We had settled finally. My dad retired, and so we knew we weren't going to move, and unless a job change happened. But in essence, we weren't going to move from Arizona after that. And so being able to commit into those friendships and starting to feel like I was putting roots down was uncomfortable in a lot of ways, but was really, really nice because there were traditions that started, right? And so many of my traditions were just family-based traditions, something my mom did every time we moved, or something my mom did for the first day of school, or things like that, right? And so I very rarely got to see long-term community traditions. And I valued that so much when I started to see how that worked. Every year there was this parade, every year there was this festival, right? And so those kind of traditions, I think once I started to feel those and see those long term, were things that I could look forward to, things I could base my memories around, right? And things that I could build upon and kind of connect myself into the community that I was in. Made a huge difference once I started to feel those traditions.
I'm very sure. I'm very sure. Because I think, for instance, like I have migrated from my own country and I am in Australia now, and sometimes you kind of feel the things that you've grown up with, that really becomes a part of your identity as well.
Yeah.
And but the good part is that even in Australia you have those community over here. You can mingle up with the Australian community and you can kind of learn more about their culture, but then you also have your own community. You're still kind of with your roots. So that sort of balances out, because it also gives us a feeling of belonging somewhere.
Yeah.
And that is something that really a lot of youth nowadays probably they struggle with, because there's so many options available. We are able to kind of go to the different countries or different cities within the same country. We are trying to find our own selves, which is great, and this is what we're trying to kind of do through this podcast, is to let them know that yes, their voice, the inner voice, their conviction is actually, it means something, and can you listen to it?
Yep.
And that's why we have someone like you, who's gone through your journey, and have listened to your own voice, or probably develop that voice on the go, in the flow of your living your journey so far. So I would really like to know that, time when you started kind of developing that, inkling or very strong voice towards this is the feel, or this is the purpose, that I am kind of really getting connected to. How did that begin for you?
Yeah, it was a kind of a journey. It was really because, when I was in high school, I was all over the place at what I wanted to be. But I come from families of helpers, right? So my mother was a teacher, my father was in the military, my aunts and uncles were all teachers, right? So everybody was in some sort of service field. So I kind of always suspected that I would be doing something that was serving someone else, right? Unlikely in business or something like that. Never the jobs that pay millions of dollars, right? That was probably not
Yeah.
ever what I was going to be in. So when I got into college, I really had to kind of start narrowing down what it was that I wanted to like. And I was that student that took everything that just looked cool, right? So,
Okay.
I finished, my first year and had, way too many credits and zero direction, right? Zero, right? I'd go see the advisors and they would go, great, you've got good grades, you've got good credits. None of them are actually towards the same, certificate or degree. I'm like, awesome. But that was important to me, right? And I caught a lot of slack for that. And I felt like I needed to keep doing it because I hadn't quite found what that one thing was that could keep me going. And, I really thought it was psychology for a long time. So I took a bunch of psychology classes and I could see myself in an office and counseling people. But I noticed myself asking a lot of questions of how people were in community in those classes. So that was great that we understand the chemicals in the brain and wellness of people and mental health and all of that. And what does that mean when they go back to their family? What does that mean when they go back into their community? And so it was really from those questions that one of my professors said, you talk much more like a social worker than you do a psychologist because you want to know how that person is inside of their community. Have you taken social work classes? And I was like, no, like, I don't even know what that is, right? I thought it was, everybody worked for, the government with children protection or something. That's what all social workers were. So I was able to start taking those courses, and that really lit fire behind what I wanted to do for me, right? And so finding out that I could help someone, and that could be in individual counseling, right? But ultimately, I'm helping them integrate into their life in the way they want to. Or I could help someone in policy and writing laws and funding to help systems create better situations for young people. I could work in a school. And so the variety of social work for me gave me some freedom in a way that allowed me to say, like, well, if it's not like a teaching degree, right? Where if you get a teaching degree, you're a teacher, right? Social work gave me a much larger variety in what I could do. And so that really made me excited about my future. And then I wasn't locked into one thing, right? I could try a lot of different things.
This is incredible. Firstly, I like to kind of highlight that your journey sort of really, it was definitely in a flow, and you were going with that flow. And I like that. I like the point that you could identify that what you relate with or what you do not relate with, and you are okay with that. And I think that is a place where a lot of us kind of are not okay, because we think the career has to be in a certain way, success is a certain way,
Yep.
life is lived in a certain way, and when that certain way thinking comes in our way, we are actually negating our own feelings, our voice, and we don't build the conviction to the things that we want to do, to take the first steps that we want to take. So I really like to kind of highlight that in your story, that you did have that conviction, and you did kind of go through, find your own path, and you tried things, and then someone along the way kind of came on, told you this is something that you might be good at, and you tried that, and then you found that fire. So thank you so much, Meghan, for sharing us how the graph went like. And I think it's really good for people, for the youth, the disruptors who are listening to us today, because we are spoiled for choice and we do get confused how to go about things. So but I really like, sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, and I do think what's interesting is that I think we get these ideas sold to young people in schools of like, this is the way to do it. And if you don't do it, then you're doing it wrong, right? And the reality is you are not doing it wrong, right? You're just not. And the narratives around that across the world, right, are based on an ideal situation and not the normal person, right? And there's so many downfalls to that ideal situation to begin with, but not everyone's going to go to college. Not everyone's going to, it's not going to look like this or that. They're not going to figure it out at 18 or at 24, right? And if you're able to release that kind of pressure valve, you start to find the freedom that allows you to find that passion, right? But if you're just stuck to, this is what I'm supposed to do. Yes, you need to make enough money to pay your bills. You need to continue to grow and learn, right? You've got to do those things. But if those things are covered, then the rest of it is release that pressure valve a little bit so your brain can actually be creative enough to think about what excites you and how you can do something to contribute to the world. Because you're not going to become a millionaire often on just what you're passionate about, right? But you are going to be able to make a good living and a life that you enjoy and a life that you love if you center that around what is it, what are the skills that are involved in this passion, what brings me joy, and what does that look like in a job, right? And
Wow.
I mean, that makes a huge difference, but you've got to relieve the pressure valve. You've got to release it a little bit.
That's very beautifully put, Megan. I like to say that. And to everyone who's listening to us today, I can definitely feel what you're trying to say, because I think I've been in the situations where, where I am kind of, doing things that I like and got the other basics covered. So that really, I can relate with what we're trying to say, that when you take off the pressure of living, like the everyday living expenses, which is something that is a responsibility of a growing adult, that, you kind of become responsible. If that part is covered, then you are able to kind of utilize the other time, to invest your time with the skills, your strengths, that passion,
Yeah.
and things come along the way. So your success is defined by you, and it could be anything. But I think the success that really gives you happiness is where each day what you're doing in the present is making sense for you. There is a goal far out in the future. You will reach there, but what you're doing each day to get there is also giving you happiness along the way. So that is an interesting part. So Megan, I like to kind of ask over here a question, that now that you've been in this industry, really empowering the youth, you've understood where this comes from and how you got into this. In this extremely glorious career of impacting the youth, I would like to understand if you are able to take us through the top 3 such situations where you've come across the youth, where you've learned that by not following their passion, what they are losing out on. If you can remember those incidences or stark situations that left that mark on you, aha, and that's why I'm in this profession, and thank God I was able to help someone with this.
Yeah, that's okay. 3. So I would say, first one I think is over my career, I've done a lot of different kinds of workforce development, right, with young people. The programs, the interventions that we're doing with them are different depending on the time of my career and that stage. But for a long time, I was working with a lot of young people who culturally and their families really expected them to go into careers that weren't really interesting to them, right? And so my dad was in construction, so I'm going to learn to be in construction. My mom was, a teacher, and so they were very much led by who was in their families. And then so they would come in and they would want workforce services, and we'd say, "What do you want to be?" "I want to be in construction." "Why?" "Because my dad did it. My uncles did it." "What do you like about it?" Right? And you'd have to start asking those questions a little more of like, okay, so do you want to work outside? Does that bring you joy? If you did this every single day, would that bring you joy? And the answers most often were no. And so we would have to kind of re-engineer, great, okay, well, I can't just, oftentimes they'd want to be an artist or something like that. Well, those don't make money, right? Great, that's true, but let's think about the skills that you're doing as an artist, and is there a job that uses those same skills that could give you money, right? And so, I think that's my number one, I think, is working with young people that have this preconceived notion of who they think they should be, and being able to help them figure out what is it that they really want to be, and how do we create a job or a career around that, right? It may not have been the exact thing they're passionate about, but the skills and the things you're doing every day are the same, but they get to leave feeling free of that. Oh, I don't have to be in construction, right? Just because I can make money doing something that does bring me joy and does excite me. So that I would think is number one. I would say, the number two one is around young women specifically. I've worked for some programs that are heavily in business type training. So we train young women to be in business or young women to be in IT. And the amount of young women that would come in and say, I want business, because they wanted to be receptionists or administrative workers or things like that. If you didn't ask any more questions, you would have taken that and we would have put them in the program and they'd be very successful and that would be wonderful. But we started asking more questions and realized that these women should be in IT. The things that they were excited about, the skill sets they had, they were saying business because they didn't see themselves as a female in IT, because that wasn't represented in the community they were in enough, right? And so it said, as a female, right, I should be this. I don't know anyone that's in IT that is a female. And so, I think that's the second one for me. The part that brings me the most joy and the part that gets me most excited is seeing like, okay, no, I'm sorry, young lady. Like, I have seen your math scores. We have gone through how you look at logic. You should be in IT. You should not be doing administrative assistant work because you have strengths here, right? And no problem with the women that really wanted administrative assistant, but so many of them wanted to just do what they saw represented of themselves, right? Yeah. And so, I'm proud when we can dig through those questions, and I'm proud when we can contribute to making sure that more people of diverse groups are represented in careers, so that the next person I meet and next young person I meet goes, I'm going to be in IT because my uncle did this or my aunt did this or whatever, right? Like, I want to build that representation enough to a level that becomes an option before they ever walk into my office, right?
Yep.
That would be two. 3, that's tough. I think, 3 would probably be in when I realized systems were such a problem. I'm very well trained in like youth development work and working with teenagers. And, I did a lot of research around when did the concept of teens come out, and that came around wartime, right? And so, many, many years ago when wartime came, because so many young people were almost stunted in how they were growing because they were growing up during that wartime, and men were gone. And so they were in this really interesting phase of they had to work to contribute, or they had to go to school, depending on what country they were living in, depends on that expectation. And so that teenager idea came from wartime. And that was something that I learned in my research. It was like, okay, great. This is not just a developmental stage, right? It's society. Society has instructed and has built this narrative around young people being this kind of way, confused, not knowing what they want to do, destructive in some ways, right? Impulsive. And that is on us, right? That's on our systems. None of those things are true. All of that passion can be harnessed to change the world, right? If young people collectively got together, then we would, as adults, have nothing to say about it, because there's so many more of you, right? And your passion is a heck of a lot more stronger than any of ours is for anything, right? So I think the third one really is like honoring those moments that I can honor that it's the systems that are stopping young people from being able to be successful and collectively change the world or individually change the world. And if we just start changing that narrative and those systems, then things are better for them, right? And so any moments I have where I can do that, right, is a big deal for me. That'd be my third.
Those are some great insights, Meghan. Thank you so much. I mean, it took a long, good career for, I think, you to kind of, go through so many individuals, interact with them, and kind of have that insight. So, firstly, thank you so much for sharing that over here. It really people who are listening to us, it would really resonate with a lot of them, because I think you've very nicely summarized that what the youth might be missing, and you've told us that they can actually earn in the profession or the skills that they are good at, so they can kind of look at that aspect as well. The second thing that you mentioned, and I think that was like an aha moment for me to kind of listen to that, people often don't think of a profession because they have never seen it. And this is where I think we kind of need to, in today's time where everything is kind of changing at a fast paced rate, the imagination is actually, far and wide. I'm sure that at this point in time, a lot of people can create, think, mix
Yeah.
and match some sort of profession that they really are looking out for. So be the first one, take that first step. Not easy, but this is your purpose, this is your choice, that's your love, that's how you want to live your life. So probably taking steps each day would probably help you. And the third was some really really important and prominent and very essential point to kind of address, that I think all of us are sort of always working towards. But it's also interesting to know that we are the people who make the system. So that's amazing. We are kind of, so we have people in the society who are kind of understanding what are the loopholes in the system. Then there are the part of the people who are part of the system. So it's more like kind of coming together and kind of, interacting with each other, kind of bringing that mindset shift, which is the most difficult thing. But I'm happy that Meghan has kind of, shared that with us, that where we are going, what are kind of the gaps. Identifying the gaps is the first most important and the difficult step, and then begins the next step. So thank you so much, Meghan. It was lovely having you over here. I know that what I can see is you have a great wealth of knowledge, experience in this field. I'm so glad that we could chat about it. Very quickly, I wanted to kind of end on this note today, having understood your formative years, that why you're passionate about it, how you got into this, what you're doing now. You said something which I really loved, and I want to kind of understand that if you are able to kind of take us through. You said that youth come as a whole and they do not need to be fixed. If you're able to take us through how or what do you kind of mean by that, and how people can support the youth?
Yeah, I think there's so much work and effort and narratives built around that young people need to be fixed. If they just did this, if they just did that, if they just had this skill, and how they come to us is whole, right? Who they are, their experiences in their life is whole as it is. And so they don't need to be fixed. They might want to have more experiences to learn more about this, right? They might want to learn more skills to be able to develop different kinds of relationships or communication. But who they came to us as is perfect just that way, right? Their own experiences and their own friendships and the things that they have gone through make them someone that, if honed correctly, right, if empowered in the right ways, will make them change the world in whatever way their strengths and skills best can, right? And so I don't need to fix anything, right? Youth workers don't need to fix anything. And it drives me crazy when we're in program talks or working with different groups across the world that are like, we just need to fix this one thing. If youth just stop doing this, if they just stop doing that, if, that those negative narratives are so terrible because youth hear them in their brains and they take them into their hearts, and that's not where they belong.
Yeah.
Right? They don't belong there, right? What belongs in their hearts is what they're excited about and what their strengths are. And to know that everything they've gone through, bad and good, right, is what made them who they are, and that's what's going to change the world. That's what's going to impact good things. And so it's important to me that others see young people that way, and they focus in on that instead of the negative of it, right, of what could be or whatever.
I think you've made a lot of listeners feel really content today by saying that. And that also means that there is someone like Meghan out there who really feels, understands, and really believes in that who you come as, you are perfect, you are whole, more than perfect, actually whole. And that's what I think what she has mentioned, that we might need to kind of improve ourselves as of where we want to in the profession, in terms of skills or in terms of where we want to go at, whatever we need, what is required to get there. But as people, as a person, That's who we are, unique. So thank you so much, Meghan. I would have loved to chat a lot more about this because I love this topic, and I can see that you've brought so much value in just a couple of, maybe a span of a half an hour today. So hopefully we have you soon. But thank you so much for being on my first step ever. And I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
Oh, let's see. Well-behaved women seldom make history. Well-behaved women seldom make history. So go get into some good trouble.
Love it. Love it. That is so powerful. That's so amazing. Thank you so much. So for everyone, I just like to first thank Meghan, and I'm going to leave her LinkedIn link in the show notes if you'd like to connect with her, see what she's doing, if you're interested in this side of the world. So yeah, thank you so much, Meghan, for being on my first step ever.
Thank you.
And I like to say to all the listeners, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. And we'll be soon with new episodes. We'll be back with new episodes. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Meghan. That was amazing. It was such a great interaction with you, and I love chatting with you on this. You're doing an amazing work. I like your thought process.
It's so kind that you brought me on. Thank you for that. I love that Atlanta connected us.
Thank you. I know that we have gone over by 3 minutes, but if you have 2 more minutes, I have a really quick question. Okay. It's going to be like a promotional snippets on Instagram, and I'm going to share that with you once this is out. So yeah, I'm going to ask a question now. Hi, Meghan. Welcome on my first step ever. My quick question to you is, what has been the aha moment in your life?
The aha moment in my life. Dang it, I got to think about it.
Could be professional, could be personal, anything recent, or maybe from your childhood.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I got it. You need to re-ask?
Yep. Okay. Thank you for being on my first step ever. I want to ask a quick question. What has been your aha moment?
My aha moment is that I don't have to do everything perfectly. And so I don't have to be a perfect mom. I don't have to be a perfect professional. I can just try, and that's got to be okay.
Love it. Love it. That is so good. And I really kind of resonate with that. Thank you so much for sharing it. Okay, next, an easy question. Okay. Hi, Meghan. How was your experience being on my first step ever?
It's been so fun. It's like having a coffee chat with an old friend.
Thank you. That means a lot. That really makes me feel that, you had a good time. Everything that we shared kind of made sense to you as well. And it was a good experience for you as much as it was for our listeners. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. So that's amazing. I have stopped the